Sue.
And I'm Helena, and we both work at the MS Trust. Just a listed disclaimer, we're recording this over Zoom because of coronavirus and social distancing, so apologies if the sound is iffy at any stage. Please do bear with us.
We'd like to welcome you to our podcast, Multiple Sclerosis, Breaking It Down, and this new series that we have called Me, Myself and I, which focuses on people with MS's stories over the past year. Why this topic? The last 12 months have been unlike any other in so many ways. On top of social restrictions and worries about job security and the health of our family and friends, people with MS have also had to contend with delays to the MS services that they rely on. The MS Trust want to highlight these people and the faces behind the statistics. We want to impress the urgent need to get MS services back on track by showing that there is a human story behind every person mentioned in the figures.
So in this series, we'll be meeting some people with MS and hearing their stories from the past year. And in today's episode, we're talking to two fabulous people, two people who are performers, and they talk about their MS journey and how MS sometimes can make you rethink what you're doing for a living and how their life has been during 2020. Now, retraining, that was a bit of a buzzword during last year, wasn't it? I saw all those posters, well, online posters, that had like the whole suggesting that ballet dancers should maybe retrain in cyber. I have a very good friend who's a florist, and obviously that was another industry that was very impacted by last year. And she was absolutely furious about that campaign. And I think a lot of performers just felt the same way as well, because it's, obviously working in cyber is a great thing to do as well. But I mean, it's like pushing people on to forcing them to retrain to do something is maybe not what you need with all the other mental health issues and things that was going last year, like the added stress of that.
When we spoke to Diva, she's been a performer for most of her life. So all of a sudden, any performing opportunities and work opportunities dried up. So it was really interesting to chat to her about how she dealt with all that and the different ways that she found to cope.
Yeah, let's have a listen.
I'm here today with Diva Hollywood, a cabaret performer who has performed around the world since 2005. She was diagnosed with MS 15 years ago, and today we're here to chat with her about her life, her diagnosis of MS, and how the last year has affected her. So hi Diva, lovely to chat to you today.
Hi, lovely to meet you too. Hi.
So could you tell us, can we start off by you just telling us a little bit about yourself? So when did you start performing and how did you come up with your alter ego?
Well, I had been aware I was an artist pretty much my whole life. Visual artist, animation and painting and that sort of thing. And I was aware of burlesque and cabaret, but because I had done acting in the past as well when I was younger, but I didn't feel like I was the right size. I wasn't a size 8 and I wasn't a super good coordinated dancer because I'm also dyslexic and dyspraxic. So I'm definitely a go right when you're supposed to go left sort of a person. And then when I got my diagnosis, the same year I got offered by a friend of mine who their partner was making a play about a circus performer whose female partner runs off to become a burlesque dancer in New York. And the girl that was supposed to do it dropped out, and he phoned me and he phoned another performer and she didn't pick up, but I picked up. So it's one of those complete chance experiences. And they got me a costume and they got me an outfit. And I did it and loved it for the little play. And then I was actually going to New York that year to work with an incredible theatre company dance company who also did electronics called Troika Ranch. And so I was in New York and I met a New York artist in Liverpool before I went. And he's like, oh yeah, you got to go to the slipper room. It's incredible. So we went to the slipper room. I took all these digital artists to the slipper room and they loved it and they got sat on by a huge blue bunny and all different things. And I said to the promoter, I was like, oh, I'm a burlesque dancer from England. Can I perform at one of your shows? And he's like, yeah, come back in a couple of weeks. And I was there for 3. And so I just kind of grabbed and made a costume. I'd never actually performed live. So this is completely me just living out a dream in my head. Can I make art into reality? And I did it for the very first time in New York in the slipper room. And it was very, compared to the rest of the New Yorkers, it was very tame and very like, ooh. But they were very sweet, and they were like, well, yeah, that's burlesque.
Oh, amazing.
And I just got hooked, and I just thought, well, instead of hiding my body when I became disabled, hey, let's show it off, let's go for it. And for the first 3 years, I was performing with a walking stick a lot of the time, because my balance was so off. My left hand side was spasming and crazy, and I couldn't see out of my left eye a lot of the time.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm continuing on to part of the story, which I was diagnosed. I got optic neuritis and lost my eyesight for about 6 months the first time, and then 3 months the second time. So I couldn't be a digital artist anymore once that had happened, because I couldn't spend that amount of time on computers. So while I was performing, it also hit me, but I could still perform. I could still do things, and people were just like, she's got a walking stick, she's dancing with a stick. Okay, we can handle that. We'll take that on. So
good.
Yeah, it just meant I could still be a creative person even with being ill, and not feeling
that was really
like,
important to you.
Yeah, the MS wasn't taking everything, because at the beginning I didn't know whether it was or how it was going to work with me. So
that's really interesting. And so you spoke a bit about your diagnosis. Can you tell us a bit more about that? What kind of were your main symptoms, and what first made you go to the doctors to kind of get it checked out?
I had actually been sort of fainting. It was really strange. It was like, I thought it was, as I always do, I always think I'm overworking. That's where I blame everything. Oh, it's too much coffee. I was having issues with my eyesight, and I was fainting a little bit, and just almost like going into Alice in Wonderland world, where the vision was just woozy and stuff. And then I woke up one morning after we'd been with friends, we'd been out for a party and came back, and everybody's like, oh no, you've just got a hangover. And I was like, no, this isn't a hangover. I can't see properly out of this eye. And we're really lucky in Liverpool that we have the St. Paul's eye hospital. So I was able to go straight down there. They had a look, and they booked me in for an MRI in a week's time. And they said, oh, well, you've either got a brain tumor or you've got MS, which was, that was a week.
Wow. That must have been terrifying.
Yeah, because they said, oh, you've definitely got optic neuritis, and this is what's going on. Because initially they said, oh, we think you've got a migraine. And I was like, I've had migraines before. It's definitely not a migraine, and it's not a hangover. This is something else. So I did a lot of research that week, and then I got my MRI, and then they were, yes, you have MS. But at that point, I didn't have enough scarring to be diagnosed officially,
right,
or to get any medication.
Okay.
So I had to wait for over a year till I had more attacks, so that I had more scarring, and then I could officially be diagnosed with MS and get some medication. So
that must have been quite difficult, sort of almost a bit of a limbo zone.
It was, and I was working on a huge project and big art project at the time, and on the past, present, and future of prosthetics and bioengineering. So I was up and down the country, and I was working with loads of different schools and incredible disabled performers and school kids and artists and musicians and dancers. Kondoko came and worked with us, and Stellart came and talked to us. You know, the artist that's got an ear embedded in his arm, he came and did it.
I know him.
Yeah, he's got like a microphone in his tooth, and it's like a phone, and the ear is his.
Oh, wow,
yeah.
Fascinating.
He's amazing.
Yeah, I need to look him up.
Yeah, so I had a very entertaining year to keep me occupied while all this was going on. And then we went away to Thailand for 2 months, and while we were away, I lost my eyesight again. But luckily I was getting lots of lovely ladies giving me Thai massages and relaxing and getting lots of vitamin D. So I'm sure that must have helped. And then when I came home and chatted to my specialist, they were like, yeah, we can officially say you have MS now, and start you on some medication. So that was sort of the beginning of it.
Yeah. And so did you know much about MS before it was sort of said to you that you might have it? Had you heard much about it? Or?
Not really. I had a friend of my mom's that had it, and all I knew was that people were in wheelchairs. You know, that was the image that you had. or had of, and a lot of people still, I think, have that view that that's what MS looks like. So yeah, that's all I knew, that she was quite young, and that it had sort of, you know, taken a lot away from her. But I didn't really know her. She was a friend of my mum's.
Okay. So we find that a lot, actually, when people get diagnosed, they sort of say, oh yeah, I did know so-and-so, a friend of a so-and-so who had it, kind of. There's always sort of somebody on the peripheral that people know, but not necessarily sort of in their inner circle. Yeah. So how did the diagnosis affect your work? So obviously, I think you said you thought you were overworking almost. So it sounds like you're a bit of a workaholic almost.
I was definitely a workaholic.
So did the diagnosis affect that, or did it make you more determined? Or
it probably, in some ways, helped, because I stopped. You know, when I was as a digital artist, I would be on the computer 15, 16 hours a day, sleep, smoking cigarettes, drinking way too much coffee, sleep for 6 hours, then get straight back onto the computer again. So not healthy. So it did affect, because I couldn't be on a computer. I couldn't see. I couldn't be under neon, or, you know, the lights that are in schools, because I used to work in schools as well at the same point, doing art education workshops.
Okay.
This is how come I did the big project with the Wellcome Trust. And I couldn't be in schools. I couldn't be under the lighting. I couldn't be on computers. And that's why I decided that, well, cabaret and burlesque, this is something I can actually do and bring things together, and at least it's more physical, and it might help with what's going on with my body. And so yeah, it completely changed. And it's only in the last, during lockdown, that I've actually started to do more digital. I'm starting to learn a new animation program, and I want to start doing animations again after 15 years. So yeah.
How have you found that, being back in front of the screen? Has it been okay, or has it sort of caused any flare-ups with your vision?
I have had issues with my eyes last year and this year, but I'm just more aware that with having done cabaret and sewing tiny little sequins on things and putting weaves into wigs, that I know that I can't be the person I was, and I have to stop, because otherwise I will get a really, really, really bad headache, and my eye hurts, and I look up and go, oh, I can't see properly.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I have to be very strict with myself, and even if there's a deadline, I have to not.
That's it. Your health's more important.
Yeah, it definitely is, and there's nothing that will get rid of that headache other than going to bed and stopping doing that for a day. So yeah, I have to be more controlled over what I do and how I do it, and I still love being creative, and I am a stubborn person. So yeah, it's just about listening, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So over 2020, the last 12 months, I suppose, how has that been for you? Because I presume you haven't really been able to perform as much as you normally would, and you said you're starting to do some more animation. How have you kind of found it?
I've had one job, and for somebody that has always worked, you know, I did Saturday jobs when I was at school. To not have work has been really difficult. My house is incredibly clean.
Wish I could say the same for mine.
Yeah, my sock drawer is organized, under the sink is clean. No, I was in London the week of the first lockdown. I was actually staying in my friend's apartment above the hospital where Boris ended up, and I was working in the vaults and doing a few different shows and doing workshops up in London. And I had friends in Switzerland who were like, leave London now, go home now. And they were really scared for me. But London was great because it was really empty, because there were a few people there and people were wearing masks. And, you know, sitting on the train, there was a Russian guy they had masks on, and he was cleaning his side of the table, and his wife just gave him a big nudge and went, clean hers too. It's like, brilliant. We're on the same table, mate. And at this point, you know, I just had a scarf on, and
we didn't really know what to expect then, though, did we? It was
not at all. You know, I had friends I was supposed to meet up with, and they were all a little bit like, well, maybe we'll just chat. And so we just chatted online and drank coffee at each in our own flats and talked that way, even though we were in the same city. And that was, I had a full year booked. I was traveling all over. I had I do WIT workshops and confident workshops, and I had loads of those booked. I said to friends, oh, you're probably not going to see me very much this year because I'm so busy. And then, pardon me, we were sitting in a show on the Saturday night. This is the Saturday before lockdown. And I think it was Spain got closed. And one of the performers was Spanish. And he was like, oh my goodness, my family are in Spain and Spain's been closed. And Liverpool had a football match. I think a Spanish football team had come. And I think that's why our infection rate had gone through the roof, because we had all this Spanish fans that weren't allowed to do anything in Spain. But yeah, they were sure, come over.
I remember thinking that was a bit crazy, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the same happened to Manchester. And that's how come the North got such a big boost of infections. So we were like, oh no, it'll be fine. And people were going, yeah, but I'm going over to my cousin's wedding in Australia in 6 weeks. I'm sure it'll be fine. None of us realised that
anybody did
everything. So I've tried to get things up and running, but it's just been so difficult. Just as we nearly get things happening, then we got restrictions. Then we went into tiers. Then we went into another lockdown. So the only thing I've done is actually extras work for a Netflix thriller.
Okay.
I was in Blackpool about a month ago when there was this massive storm, and we were doing, hey, we're partying on the street, we're in a parade, and there was a llama, and there was stilt walkers who had to stop because they were getting blown off because it was a gale. Luckily, the rain stopped, and I jumped in with the drag queens in the Cinderella coaches, and we had a little bit of protection. So it was really funny, and everybody was being really careful because in between shots you had to have your masks on and lots of hand sanitizer. But yeah, that's it really. I've been learning. I knew 3 songs on my ukulele before lockdown. I now know 10. I can sing amazing. And play 10 songs. I'm learning guitar because 16-year-old me always wanted to, but it was all the boys that did guitar. It wasn't the girls. So I don't have feeling in my fingertips, but it's not MS. It's from
really, yeah.
And I'm finding it really good for my brain, because I've got a friend who had a stroke recently, and her doctor got her to sing because, it was sort of like a stroke. She was having migraines and it was affecting her speech. So she couldn't speak, but she could sing.
Oh, wow.
So I started doing singing lessons and singing with my ukulele. And I think there's days when I'm having really bad brain fog after I sing and after I play. I feel like a little bit of something is working better in my brain, and my mind.
That's really interesting.
Better. So yeah, so that's been helping. I have been learning ventriloquism as well. It was something I started about 3 years ago, and because of life got put on hold. So yeah. Like, well, so I've been doing lots of classes online for that, and yeah, keeping busy.
That sounds amazing.
Well, because the first 2 lockdowns I did, it was all very practical. I was like painting and cleaning and sleeping, and then after Christmas I decided I'm going to start the Diva Hollywood School of Fun. So it's mindfulness, guitar, ukulele, ventriloquism, and lino print and animation.
Oh, wow.
I don't always get all of that done, but that's the curriculum. Oh, and I'm now doing gardening, and before the last 6 weeks of fatigue I was exercising as well, so keeping as busy as I could.
That's fantastic. I love that you started up, sort of managed to pick up hobbies that you always kind of wanted to do but never quite had the time. I think that's so great.
I just thought, well, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of now or never, isn't it? You've got this time now that you probably won't ever have in the future. So yes. Yeah, no, that's really great. Have there been sides of it that have been quite negative for you at all? sort of the not working and that kind of thing, has that had an impact on your mental health, or or how have you coped with that side of things?
I think I realized I'm actually an introvert who's only an extrovert when they get paid for it. So I really enjoy no makeup, my hair up in a scrunchy bun, comfortable clothing. But I have missed, I think for me, because Diva Hollywood is so associated for me with when I got sick and having such a bad time. Diva was not, well, she is sick, because when I'm performing, when I host shows, I do talk about my illness and about invisible disability with the crowd. So I think I've missed that, just like being able to be the most super version of yourself, that you can forget about how you feel or your illnesses, or because you're always working towards doing that and being this crazy version of yourself, and working on new acts. And as I say, I host shows as well, so chasing up performers to get them to send me stuff to write for them, and also whip cracking, because that's my main skill. And when I started whip cracking, it was actually, I was still walking on a stick, with a stick. Right. And for me, whips helped me to kind of fool my brain that I was able to be better, because it helps with your core, and you have to stand up straight to crack a whip. Okay. Or you have to be aware of where your body is to crack a whip, or else you hit yourself in the face or the ear or the eye or the bum or the arm.
And you don't want to do that.
No. Well, you do it once and you don't.
Yeah, then you learn not to do it again. Yeah.
Yes, because it really hurts. So I think I missed that, the kind of like cracking the whips, and because that definitely helps me physically, and the lift of just being ridiculous for 2 or 3 days a week, where you can completely escape and just be ridiculous, and then go back to being in your pajamas and being asleep, which is a lot of the time was how it was. I'd work at weekends, sometimes during the week, and then Mondays are showgirl Sundays normally, and you just sleep.
I love that. Mondays are showgirl Sundays.
Yeah, for sure. We just like, no, we're not doing anything today. So yeah, it's I think I was going to a very depressed place until I started the Diva Hollywood School, and like, nope. I started setting my alarm for 8 o'clock in the morning. So since Christmas, I get up every single morning at 8, and I'm kind of trying to catch my energy. So it's like,
that's good.
I know I'll get tired, but if I get up at 8, I actually manage to get more done before I need my nap.
Oh, that's good. It's a really good way of kind of planning your time and your day. Yeah.
Well, my plan was in life was to live life like I have 4.5 years to live. Because if you live life like you have a day, you'll get arrested. But if you live life like you've got 4.5 years, then there's time for naps.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's such a good motto. I love it.
But you can still fit in lots of adventures and lots of silliness and lots of excitement. But
that's brilliant. I might adapt that myself. So over the course of the last year, we've had lots of reports from people with MS who haven't seen their MS nurses or their neurologists, or haven't necessarily been able to get access to the treatments that they need. I just wondered what your experience has been. Have you missed out on any care because of the lockdown, or have you still been able to get the regular appointments and things that you'd expect?
The MS nurses, because we're really lucky in Liverpool, we've got the Walton Centre, which is phenomenal, and the MS nurses, I love those women. They're incredible. It's been a little bit weird because I had to do a Zoom call with my specialist, and I was having issues with spasms in my eye and my face and my nose, my mouth, and down this side. But again, I thought it was too much coffee and too much working. And then I realized, oh no, this was actually a symptom. And it was, I can't remember what it's called now. So we waited until it got worse. I guess I waited until it got worse, and then I had to take the drugs, and then they didn't agree with me. So, but that was through the MS nurses, because I'd had my call. We were able to organise. So they were great. You know,
brilliant.
They were able to sort of book everything in. But I think the only thing, because normally they would give you Botox to stop the spasms happening in your eye, because it really feels like your eyeball's doing its own thing. It's jiggling around, and I was getting it in both eyes as well. So that clinic had been shut over the first lockdown, so they've got a massive backup of people, and I've been put on a list, but I still haven't heard about it. So I just need to chase them up again. They said to sort of see if that's happened, but other than that, they've been wonderful. And, you know, I've been able to talk to them and say, well, the drugs didn't work. I'm not great with drugs, to be honest. I try and stay away from it as much as possible. But yeah, the side effects just eventually they were started off okay. And then, you know, because I've had neuralgia in my left hand. The top of my hand feels like it burns most of the time, and I can't have people touch it. And that actually went away and has stayed away. So even though I'm not on the drug anymore, I'm like, hey,
that's good. One benefit.
Yeah, this is good. We celebrate the bits that work.
Oh, brilliant. And hopefully now we're starting to come out of lockdown. The vaccines are being rolled out, and things at the moment, as we record, are looking a bit brighter. So it'd be good to know what you're kind of looking forward to. I guess you're looking forward to getting back to performing, but what kind of plans have you got for the future, if you like?
I redid my CV as an artist, and I have been putting in for other jobs, as well as I redid everything for my performance jobs, so put in for that. But I'm working with an amazing performer in Brighton. Like I said, I have dyslexia, and she's helping me to write an Arts Council bid, because I want to take my art practice further and use these skills, the ventriloquism and the playing and the circus skills I have and the art skills I have, to be able to create a piece of theatre. Because I want to do something. It's called, in my head at the minute, we're putting in for our research and development money, and it's called Visible in Every Way. So it's about being my diagnosis and how it's happened and what I did, and to help to try and motivate others to be able to face whatever it is in their life, or to support those that they know that have an invisible disability, and how they can face it and know that they're not alone, and that there are other people out there, and that, okay, so maybe they can't do it as well as they used to do it, but they, you know, just how to save that energy, how to say no to the silly things, so that you've got the energy to do the good things. Really good. So it's sort of a mix between a TED talk, I guess, and a fairy story and silliness. And
amazing.
I want to make people laugh. Yeah. That's my plan for
that's brilliant.
2021 and 22, and sort of help people.
We all need a bit of laughter and fun, don't we, after the last year or so I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I want to kind of be able to take things further, and if it doesn't work, we don't know what's going to happen, so it can work online, and hopefully, but it'll be able to go further out into the world as well.
Definitely. So, keep us posted how that goes. I'd be really interested to see how you get on. Definitely see the end product. That would be brilliant.
Oh, amazing. I will.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, fantastic. Oh, it's been so lovely to talk to you. I think, you had such a you do such fantastic things, and just really fun things, and it's been I think a lot of people will really enjoy hearing your story, so thank you so much.
But remember, I do sleep in between.
This is true.
Big chunks. I definitely sleep. I call myself wonky and wonderful. So it's like
you've got some fantastic sayings. I love it. It's brilliant.
But yeah, don't because people get really like, oh no, but I can't do that. And I'm like, yes, you can, but you must sleep and eat your greens on the day you do your injections.
More good advice.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Now, if this was a commercial podcast, here is where there would be an advert. But as we're a charity, we don't do that. So instead, we'd like to take opportunity to tell you about our fantastic resources for people with MS.
That's right. Our website, mstrust.org.uk, has tons of information and resources for people affected by MS.
And if you wanted to find out more about working life in MS, there's a whole section on our website under Life with MS.
And we're back.
Wonky and wonderful. I think I'm going to steal that saying. I love that. What a fantastic story Diva had. I really love how nothing really seems to stop her.
She's great, isn't she? She's such a positive outlook on life. She seems to twist things around to a more positive way of thinking, which is brilliant. And I really love the different sorts of weird and wonderful ways that she's found to keep herself occupied over lockdown. Really,
yeah.
Things that you wouldn't necessarily think of every day, like ventriloquism. I think it's brilliant.
I think she crammed into 1 year what more people would do maybe in a lifetime. I don't know.
Absolutely. She's done far more than I have. I know that much.
Yeah, I thought that was absolutely inspiring. And let's move on to our next guest then, Will. Over a year ago, we did a little series about MS and the coronavirus. And one of the people we spoke to was Will Berard, a volunteer for the MS Trust, a software engineer, stand-up comedian, and he has starred in his own series of videos in our YouTube channel called Will Talks. And now we're here just over a year later, and we thought it would be interesting to find out how Will is getting on now. Hi, Will. How are you?
Hi, Eleanor. I am as well as could be. May 2021. Probably better than I was a year ago, and I think I'm not the only one in that situation. How have you been?
Yeah, I've been all right. Just after you and me spoke last time, I was sent off to furlough, so that was a strange experience. Felt weird to sort of be away from the MS Trust and not doing stuff because I knew they were super busy with everything going on. So furlough was an interesting experience. How's your MS been during lockdown?
Thankfully, fairly discreet, I suppose, quiet. I have not had any flares or symptoms. I'm learning more to appreciate the executive function symptoms of MS, and that has helped me to realize that maybe things like the depression and anxiety were not so much primary as secondary, in that the executive function means I would deprive myself of, kind of doing socializing, doing things I like and whatnot, and that in turns reinforces the depression. So it was just an interesting pivot. So I got a lot of help with that. But in terms of the actual MS itself, I did get, because it's just been a year, wasn't it? So I did get my infusion of Ocrevus tentatively back in September. It was kind of briefly delayed, but that has gone ahead. I did skip my spring one because it was all sorts of COVID vaccinations. I didn't want to. It would have fallen between my first and second jab, and I'm no immunologist, but that doesn't sound very like a good idea.
Yeah.
But that was just delayed to August, hopefully. The services have been impacted. I've not seen, the only health professional I've seen with actually fairly regularly is my dentist, because I've had like a huge amount of dental work. Beyond that, it was all phone appointments. When I spoke to my MS nurse, she said that she was taken briefly from the MS service to serve on the front line, as it were, COVID ward, ICU and whatnot. So I like to think, I was listening to the podcast about people being diagnosed during the lockdown. I was very impressed to see that the general arc from first symptom to diagnosis wasn't, it wasn't as bad as I feared. And I wonder if, a lot for people with MS or, suspected diagnosis of MS, whether on some levels having appointments of a video or phone may have some positives in that, you don't have the transfer and so on. They can probably happen more often, more quickly as well. Yeah. But I, of course, I can't tell until I like to see the data, broad data across the country. What's been your experience, both as a sort of personal, because you've got MS yourself, but also generally from the MS Trust, what have you been seeing?
Well, when we set out to do the podcast, we thought, a big worry was that people haven't been seeing their health professionals, so they might have gotten worse with their MS. People haven't gotten diagnosed. So the diagnosis story was an interesting one, because how fast they actually got from first symptoms to diagnosis. So that's a win definitely for the NHS. I've seen health professionals just for blood tests because of the drug that I'm on. But all the sort of face-to-face appointment that I was supposed to have got cancelled, or they were over the phone. I kind of wish Zoom feels a little bit more like you're actually meeting someone when you see them, because on the phone it still felt a little bit stressed, maybe because it was a bit like, oh, I haven't spoken to you for a year. What's up with you? And you kind of think, what's happened? Because you only think about what's sort of happening the last few weeks rather than maybe what's been going on for a while. But I think what we found with the MS nurses was during the first lockdown, a lot of them got redeployed, frontline services. And then during the second one and the third one, more of them were in service, but it sort of took a little longer for them to get back to people. So, but generally people could get a hold of their MS nurse, even if it took a bit longer. But I don't think very many have been seeing patients face to face. And I think there's particularly a worry for people who have more progressed MS. We need to see sort of, physios and more sort of advanced MS caretakers. And those people I do worry about if they actually have progressed worse than they should have, because of not seeing their health professionals. We're sort of still mining the data as it is and looking at it. And we're really, because we had to shut down our sort of services that we spoke about that in a previous podcast with our CEO, because we had to shut down our advanced nurse, MS Nurse Champion programs and the nurse program where we try and supply more nurses, just because half of the staff was furloughed. And if we supplied more nurses, we were worried that they would not work within the MS services, but actually owing to COVID, stolen straight away. But the good news is that program is back on again now. So hopefully we should be able to try and help the situation. But it is a worry, I think. It
is. I mean, I think perhaps the true measure of things going back to normal, as you keep hearing, would be not so much the economy or, the theatre and the exhibitions and the clubs and the pubs and whatnot. That's obviously very nice and important. But like whether the NHS will have caught up on all of the backlog of, elective surgery, cancer treatments, and so on. So, I mean, us as people with MS on the MS angle, that's one side of it. And it's good to see. It's always swings and roundabouts. Like there's bumps, but people get over them. I like to think I'm getting the impression that overall the system is not bearing that too badly. Like it could be hugely worse, but again, I've got it's just kind of a combination of personal impression and I guess surprising optimism, which is very out of character for me.
Have you had your vaccine? Because you were saying about the Ocrevus.
Yes. Oh yeah. I took it as soon as it was offered. I ended up. I didn't choose, but it ended up getting the AstraZeneca first jab early February. Early February. That sounds really maybe early March, February and May, something like that. Just kind of. I had the second one just this month, and the usual you get 24-hour quite feverish and so on. But I feel like it's such a mental relief, just the anxiety. Like I wasn't realizing how much anxiety and fear I was carrying around until I got the first jab, and that started to lift. Like the idea that suddenly you couldn't have someone passing you in the street and coming within your 2-meter radius without this immediate concern. So it's on a broader scale in the general population, there are other questions about the vaccine, but I encourage everyone to get it, and I'm very happy I got it. And in fairness, I'm also very happy I ended up in a country that did so well, at least on that front, which almost not quite, but almost makes up for how poorly they handled the early parts.
I agree. I think if it's one thing that the vaccine rollout has been very impressive, how quickly it's gone. I'm still waiting for my second one. It should happen sort of.
Are you a Pfizer person?
No, I'm AstraZeneca as well. Funnily enough, we were joking, saying I had to have it because it's a Swedish-English company. So I thought, well, yeah,
obviously
that's being a Swede in England, had to have it. But yeah, I felt fine after mine, just a bit tired. So I'm sort of hoping that the second one will be fine as well. But it's more and more people now at the trust has had them as well. So we've actually started to meet up a little bit in person, having sort of meetings outside, and it makes a big difference to actually get to see people again.
But that's the other side of it. So what was interesting when we went into lockdown and it's not so much the lockdown itself, it's about the sort of mental threshold we're crossing, because that's the unknown. And a lot of people with MS were doing better than the general population, because we used to radical uncertainty. You can't always do the things that you do. You don't know. You take it one day at a time. You don't know what tomorrow might bring, and so on. And it's not the first time that's happening. I'm listening to podcasts and whatnot generally in the sort of disability and shielding world. And as the restriction got lifted the first time around, like back June last year, and every time we're lifting again, I for one have, and I know a lot of disabled and people with long-term conditions have had also this almost opposite reaction of sort of a bit of concern, a bit of, hey, we were having something that was working for us and it was kind of quite nice and safe. Let's not rush into the whole socialize and so on, and the obligations. And what do you think about that?
No, I agree totally. I find the timing of things a little bit strange, because not everybody has had the first jab just yet, and we're already kind of going out to do stuff by this 21st of June date. So I find the timing a little bit strange, and I feel very much like I want to. There's been a few things that people have sort of said, oh, can you come out and do this? Maybe go to the pub. And I sort of said, well, I'd like to have the second jab before I do anything, just for my own sake of sanity, I think. But I feel like, a lot of people with MS have been careful, and especially the people who are actually shielding through the whole thing. And I think it's very sensible to do. Instead of just running out, because we certainly don't want another lockdown. So.
Yes. Well, or do we though? If we're the kind of people that bear those news well, I don't know. I think for me it's been because my experience of the pandemic certainly was different. Everyone's experience obviously is singular, but as it happened, I wasn't in work and I had left my job in software back in the fall of 2019, and it's only over the course. So I've had my own sort of get out of. Even before that, I was working fully remote since 2016. So I feel like I've had all of the uncertainty and the career change and all that stuff early and almost decoupled from COVID. And then over I think it was around my birthday, I somehow reconnected. In hindsight, I realized now it's been a long held calling, and now I'm gonna start initial teacher training. And teach as a computer science teacher, train to teach as a computer science teacher starting in September. I got a PGC at Wellington University, got a scholarship from the British Computing Society. And so that's really helped reorient my life as an educator, because I'm really interested in sort of the tech, but how children and young people relate to tech. And it's fascinating and quite scary, if I'm very honest with you. And you must see it yourself, because you've got kids, and this idea that digital literacy is now on the curriculum. Yeah, we're the last generation, and I feel like I'm on the edge of the bell curve in terms of digital literacy and IT skills in my generation. But I feel sorry for the parents that are going to grow and lack the common language to be able to, and have bring up children that will be extremely digitally literate. So it reminded me, well, you might actually, that's another thing you might be familiar with when you're a first generation immigrant. And then your children are born in your country of adoption. And so they grew up in the culture and with the language and so on. And so you get this dichotomy, this gap between you and your kids, and sort of like how much, do you still have this common language? And I'm really curious as to what's going to happen when all of the millennials are going to be parents with teenage kids, and that gap in digital literacy and sort of approach to technology is going to manifest. But yeah, long story short, the big thing, like my retraining as a teacher, taking some time off, career change, that's all happened during that year. But I wonder, if there's this sort of, it's still a special time, it's still lockdown. It's okay if you're not, we're hearing musicians instead of comedians. Obviously, the arts have been decimated, but at the same time, the fact that you don't have that pressure to go on stage and get gigs and so on, you can like take time to contemplate a bit within and so on. That there's a bit of a pang of, not like it's ending so soon. That wouldn't be quite the way to put it. Definitely not so soon. But this thing about like, that was nice. The idea that like everyone was at home, but we knew everyone was at home. We kind of all lifted the pressure. And now we're back to like, how quickly can we socialize as much as we can? With all that culture and whatnot. But yeah.
I had a conversation with some of my colleagues yesterday, and I was sort of saying how much I have benefited from working from home, because we're in an open plan office normally, and when my cognition goes funny, I get so sort of affected by what goes on around me. I feel like I need to have one of those Handmaid's Tales hats, you know, so I can just sort of look straight onto my screen and not see what's going on around me. And obviously being at home when the children weren't at home, because that could be distracting. It's been totally fine because I've just been able to get on with stuff so much better. And, I feel like as an organization, we've really taken that into and hoping to do some sort of hybrid thing where we can be both in the office and not. And I think a lot of people with MS who have been working through the thing have felt the same feelings. And I've heard some worrying things that there was some report of some employers that are just like, no, we just want people back into the office because that's our culture. And I feel like, well, it's stupid to have spent this whole year learning new things and learning things about ourselves and maybe kind of push the boundaries out a bit on what working life is and not taking that.
You're right. I think that's the feeling for me, the dominant feeling. And I always, I feel like the need to try and speak for a larger set of people than just myself and analyze it on a broader scale. But it's just this impression that, like, yes, of course, everyone wants to go back to quote unquote normal, although it's not going to be the old normal. But there's this idea of like, we should really take stock of all the changes we've made and consciously sit down with the various people involved and decide which ones we're going to keep and which one are we going to do away with. And the fact that it's all happening so organically and that the direction, the end game, the objective, this notional target is this kind of return to normal. I feel like we kind of might be throwing some of the positives of the habits and the changes we've made along with the bathwater. Yeah. And that's the key. But it's really, I think it's really going to be down to each individual employer or, set of friends or venues or family and all of those groups. And how do we, what's our new way of being with each other, working with each other and so on in the old new normality, new norm.
The new norm, yeah. I've spoken to a few people who were on furlough who hated it and some people who absolutely loved it. I found it really hard in the beginning because it was a little bit like, what do I do with my time? And then I had to go into doing the whole homeschooling thing, which was quite difficult. But once we sort of stopped thinking, well, we need to follow this schedule that school set us and sort of set our own schedule. And me and my boys, we were out and we decided to go out and try and do this couch to 5K because I thought I run. So I thought, well, let's get the kids out running as well. And we were out in nature so much and it was so sort of fantastic, the feelings that I now sit a bit when I'm working, kind of thinking back, like, actually, that was a pretty, with a risk of sounding very corny, a pretty magical few months actually having that with the kids. Because, my oldest, he's 12 now, starting to like to sit in his room a lot playing video games and the fact that we just got to spend all that time together was really, really nice. So I think, thinking back on it now, maybe I'm forgetting about the things that were really hard and horrible about homeschooling and furlough and just thinking back, the weather was nice and we were out running and it was lovely.
That was only a year ago. No, I couldn't believe that. I think there's going to be this nostalgia and there's also this feeling that, we could have done we've done a bit, but we could have done so much more, right? We could, all those banana breads and learning Italian and all of this, you start with the best of intention and then the reality kicks in. I myself have done unwittingly a couch to 5K, but kilograms. So I haven't just, gained 5 kilograms on the couch.
That's happened
it's it's not going to be as popular, obviously, but maybe if I sort of patent the method, loads of carbs. Here's the key, pasta.
So this whole idea of retraining as a teacher, that's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people have done switched jobs and things like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Imagine my jealousy to think, I always feel like I need to add that, I have retrained and taking a massive, career change and turn in my, my life, orientation of values. And it happened to be in 2020, but it's not because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But that certainly that gave me sort of the more I had toyed with the idea of becoming a teacher already kind of maybe 15 years ago. I went into the private sector itself and it's very lucrative, if anything. But now I feel like I've got the maturity and the experience to be able to do it. And I feel like it's this thing, is this, the first half of life, you're really about the outer, the social, the professional, the career, whatever. And then as you age, you get, it's such a cliche thing to say, but you want to do something a bit more meaningful, be part of something that's larger than yourself, and not having children myself, but I've always kind of volunteered with kids, and this sort of became more, and I've always had this knack for just explaining things, and the whole sort of, inform, entertain, and educate type thing. So it's really with the accent and entertain, but just with a purpose, and not just comedy for its own sake, although that can be fun. And when you think about it, in 2020, I mean, there's not like all of the comedy has shut. You get the Zoom gigs, and that's a whole different thing. So de facto, for the past year, the only chance you've had to kind of do 5, 10, 15 minutes of material with a solid guaranteed crowd of up to 30 people is teaching. So there you have it. That's just an outlet for the comedy thing. But it was it's interesting. It had happened at this time. I think it was just not innocent as much as I want to decouple it. But yes, you're right. A lot of people, and I think that's a good thing, that a lot of people have started to reevaluate what they want to do, and it's unfortunate that there's going to be a seismic shift in the economy, and this will result in job losses. So there's this idea like no one wants pilots to be out of a job. Pilots is an easy one because they get paid so much and whatnot. So that we don't mind those being out of a job, but like everyone agrees it would be nice if like fewer air miles were traveled. Yeah. So similarly, when you sort of see everything shutting down and we're doing absolutely fine with just essential stuff, you start questioning whether we need 3 or 4 different chains of frothy coffee, but no one wishes an employment on the barista. Yeah. So but it was interesting to see in the intakes of the teacher training stuff that there was a lot of former corporate workers. And as a result, the scholarships and the bursaries have changed. So like math, science, physics, the state is throwing money at you if you're willing to teach those. But all things like modern languages, all of the bursary for this stuff, because there's been so many people wanting to retrain, that's all been cut. So, well, we'll see what kind of caliber of teachers we'll get.
Well, I mean, the teachers have certainly worked crazy hours, and it's been absolutely mad for them during lockdown, I should think. I mean, I've spoken a bit with the teachers at my son's school, and sort of having to switch over to digital so quickly, but then also looking after some of the key workers' children. I think the teachers haven't really been celebrated enough in this kind of talking about key
they deserve
workers.
The clap.
Yeah.
No, wait, that came out wrong. They don't deserve the clap. They deserve to be clapped. It's interesting as well, because education is one of this, like the largest of largest ship, right? In terms of steering something and making change. And just over the course of a year, when you compare like between the first lockdown and this kind of enforced, gruesome, dismal period around the new year, where it was only key workers' children, because I'm like part-timing at the local primary, just kind of evening caretaker, locking up the building and so on. And so I've sort of slowly performing entryism into the education world, and it was fascinating to see very quickly, out of necessity, just kind of people coming up with solutions and stable models of remote learning starting to appear. But of course, that also is double-edged. I mean, arguably the one point of the school, and even the point of school uniforms, which is something that we've gotten rid of. I don't know about Sweden, but like in France, it's seen as like terribly old-fashioned. But there's this idea that if you have the children in this specific space with those specific tools or even clothes, then their education becomes completely independent from their home circumstances, which is what you want education to be, because you don't want to bring the inequalities of home into the classroom. And unfortunately, yes, the digital education inequality has become all much more prominent. So as I was kind of like I was doing a day of caretaking, and there's this lady that called on the phone and saying, yeah, I'm into kind of, homeschool my kids, but I've got like 5 of my children are in the primary and they're all at home at the moment. And there's like maybe 1 or 2 devices, and how are you gonna handle that? It's good. I mean, I've not, it was interesting that I was kind of in between those two worlds, because I was keeping an eye to what I was doing in sort of tech company, corporate and so on, which they were always, they was all ready to go. They were always, because people were taking days from home and so on. They just had to click a couple of buttons. And because it was sort of much less conscious, I think that there's been much less learning. It seems as a more continuous, you can be at home, you can be at the office thing. There's much less of like, all right, here's the new way of doing thing, and here's the lesson. In education, it's much more of that. Doing any kind of change, like risk assessments, there's so much paperwork and so on, that it was heartwarming and really, really, fantastic to see people stepping up to the challenge.
They got ready so quickly as well. I think from the first lockdown, we didn't get that much. We got bits from the school, and then after Christmas, I mean, my eldest, all his lessons were just online. He was just up there at 9 o'clock and then came down at 3 o'clock. So I did hardly, and it was all, lessons all the way through, which was funny when he was doing PE, because it sounded like an elephant was upstairs. But the little one, he had sort of different things where you had to engage with him a bit more because he's only 7. So, but
so this is the early years are really, really difficult. Seeing sort of like reception children kind of having class on Zoom is a bit like, still.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very impressed by what they managed to do. Speaking of educating and reaching out to people, let's talk what the next project that you're doing for us, the podcast.
The podcast. See, that's an interesting. So I've noticed that the MS Trust on their YouTube channel has got a wealth of content and really good info about symptoms, about treatments. There's interviews with MS nurses, with neurologists, and so on. And this stuff. I mean, I noticed that I discovered it. I felt like I was hitting upon a forgotten treasure trove, and I thought it would be super helpful to repackage that content as audio only, maybe kind of recut it, edit it, sprinkle some of my humor on it for better or for worse, and then republish it. And I'm really looking forward to that reaching as many people as possible, because I feel like the information, the mission of information of the MS Trust is not to be underestimated, and anything I can do to help with that is always a good point in my life.
And I think that's a fantastic mission to have, because we're very much an information charity, and reaching out to more people, and especially with podcast world, because it's a fairly new world for the MS Trust as well. So we're hoping if people come across this podcast and they don't know about us, then head over to the mstrust.org.uk and have a look for much more information, maybe packaged without less of the Will sprinkling of humor, but still very accurate and evidence-based. I have had a listen to the first one, and I thought it sounded brilliant. So we've given Will the Ask the Expert section of our YouTube videos, which is something that comes out of Open Door. One of the team members, Gemma, tends to interview people for Open Door, and then she records it as well, and then uploads it onto YouTube. And we're looking forward to seeing what the next one will bring.
I'm very much looking forward to making more of them. Watch this space. If you're listening to this now, you're already on the right feed, so it will drop. Yeah, things drop these days. It's all about drop things, like very.
Yeah, we need to get a proper day a week set. I realized that we haven't done this. We need to
a publication calendar. Yes. And then you see like the proper podcast. Even will kind of cram a little 2-minute episode just as a sort of, hey, this feed is still active. Watch this space. Next week we're starting a new series, and it's interesting. I feel like the way we access content has become in a way much more passive, because as a user you just kind of sign up to stuff, and then it comes down the pipe, and then you're picking up whatever has come out this week. And that was the starting point to say, okay, so if that's happened in the past, then people are going to forget about it. And let's just kind of be cheeky and try and make the most of the content we already have, for sure. That the problem with that is some of the information that's kind of gone a little bit out of date, but it's just about re-editing and changing that. Yeah.
And a lot of the topics will be sort of the same advice that's given now. I think, if there's anything to do with medication, obviously that changes a lot. But when it comes to things like fatigue and pain and those subjects, it tends to sort of still be quite the similar advice.
Absolutely.
Unless we're, traveling back into the 50s, where the advice was certainly very different from what they give now. Yes, so we're looking forward to hearing that. And meanwhile, if you want to see more of Will, you can head to YouTube and our channel and look at his Will Talks videos. They're very funny. Especially like the one about fatigue. We're very grateful that you're volunteering for us. I mean, you've been doing a few bits for us, and we've had actually quite a few requests during 2020 for people to sort of help out, because they knew that charities were struggling. And there's something that we're looking into very much now, trying to get more people to be able to help us volunteering. Did you do more volunteering sort of during?
Yes. Yeah. I think I'm definitely not the only one in that case. I think I've got the MS Trust, of course. I got myself involved with the Shift MS, the MS Social Network, the UK MS Register, which is really this scientific. It's kind of in partnership with Swansea University, and it's this website where people with MS sign up and fill in questionnaires and give in data about themselves, about their disease, treatment, relapses they may have, and this all gets collated. And it's the power of big data. It's the same idea. It's the same thing that allows Cambridge Analytica to run a personality questionnaire on Facebook and then Trump elected, but for good, if you will, right? It's like big data for good. And I feel like volunteering is definitely the most selfish thing you can do, because it's got such a tremendous positive impact on mental health. I've also volunteered with a local mental health charity. We kind of run local checking. I have got befriending calls, and it's this idea that it's very easy, particularly in times of isolation and pandemic lockdown, and with the added pressure weighing on everyone's mind, it's very easy to sort of fall within and forget that reaching out to other people is such a balm for the soul. I mean, it sounds a bit like I'm waxing lyrical, but I found, as a very introverted, slightly self-absorbed person, I found that it's sort of like getting out of my own head and kind of just chatting with people and catching up with them and helping their mental health, or providing this or that blog post and doing something for the community has been a tremendous boon for my well-being. And I wonder if, because a lot of people were on furlough for a long time, and I think the volunteering sector has not quite compensated for the lack of the hit in fundraising and in all of the money side of charity work, but certainly that's one of the good things that have come out of the pandemic. So I recommend to everyone to volunteer. Think globally, act locally. If you want to volunteer with the MS Trust, you're of course more than welcome. Although I like to think I'm cornered at market. No, I really want to put a good word in for the UK MS register. If you have MS and you're not on the register, you should be. And it's great to feel like, yes, I am telling someone about my symptoms, and you kind of always kind of have to on a scale of 1 to 10, But this feeds into, again, something like larger than yourself, and outcomes and research comes out of it, and that's really helpful to the whole MS community.
Absolutely. I did a little bit of volunteering during my furlough for a youth charity. And it was completely different from what I do at the MS Trust, was sort of helping out. And it was very interesting to see how another organization works. And like you said, you really felt valued for it as well, because people were very happy for you to sort of reach out and help them. So good for the soul and good for the community. Right, well, thank you so much, Will, for chatting to us, and we're looking forward to hearing the podcast, which should be out after this one.
Thank you very much, Helena. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Will. And we're back. It was really nice to chat to Will again. I think it was great to hear that he's been retraining to become a teacher. I have a feeling that my son would love a teacher like Will.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Have you ever thought of retraining? I mean, we hear quite a lot of people who've been diagnosed with MS that they suddenly think that they want to take on a slightly different career journey. So why do you think that is?
Well, yeah, I think there's a few reasons. You can definitely hear stories where people have to adapt, like Diva said about working in front of the computer when you're struggling with eyesight, or if you have like a very physical job. Some people might ask to have more of a desk-based job. I remember a few years ago chatting to a policeman who used to be like a cycling policeman, and then when he was diagnosed with MS, he was sort of asked to do more of desk-based jobs. But I also think, and this is like more the case of me, that when you get diagnosed, you might sometimes get a little bit of a wake-up call that you're immortal, and perhaps you shouldn't be spending your time doing something that you don't completely enjoy, and you should be spending your time doing something that you really do enjoy. So I came from quite a kind of techie internet company background, almost cyber, bringing back to what we were talking about in the start. And I worked for like a really corporate industries before, and I sort of started questioning if that was what I really wanted to do with my life. And I was tired. I had lots of relapses in the beginning, and I didn't particularly like what I was doing. I didn't really feel challenged by it. It used to bore me a bit, which then made me really sleepy and tired, and the fatigue was really bad. So that's when I moved to the charity sector, and then I think more specifically for myself, the MS sector, because this was a job where I could like help others in the same situation as myself, and plus the opportunity to learn loads about MS. which I feel like I'm very fortunate to do with my fantastic colleagues that, are just a huge source of information about anything MS related. And yeah, that was 13 years ago now. So
wow,
yeah.
really. I think as well, I think the lockdown has also given people more time to think about what it is that they actually want out of life, and what changes they could make, and sort of giving them a little bit more time than they might have had previously, which is maybe why Will suddenly thought, actually, this is the way I want to go, or Diva's thought, I can try this, that and the other that I wouldn't necessarily have had time to do beforehand.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess spending a lot of time at home with, for some people, the only company that you had was your own brain, and really thinking about these things make you kind of think about what you prioritize in life. I think when I was on furlough, and like I said, when I was chatting to Will, I struggled with the homeschooling and that in the beginning. But then when I think about back on it now, a year later, that sort of extra time that you get to spend with your children, that was really, really special. And I think, say in 10 years time, I will probably look back at that very fondly. So
yeah.
So I think having sort of this time to actually just think about what you really do want to do, because there's a lot of people that are stuck in jobs that they don't really enjoy, but they kind of think, well, for the greater good, I'll just keep on doing it. And I think when you have some condition like MS, you have to think about, it's not just your physical well-being, but your mental well-being as well. So definitely. I'm not saying everybody should run out there and retrain and become something different, but I certainly think that, talking to these two people to sort of know that you can take the step, you can dare to do something to change your life for the more positive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really positive that they've both taken those steps.
And I hope that, we can catch up with them again in a few months' time and see how it's all going. Obviously, Will, you will hear more from, because he is working on our other podcasts series, the Ask the Expert Redux, which will come out after this one. So hopefully in a week or so, you should be able to hear more from Will.
Now, remember, if you have any questions about MS and work, or questions relating to MS, we are here for you. Our inquiry service is available Monday to Friday, except UK bank holidays, from 9 to 5 p.m. Outside these hours, you can leave us a message and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
And you can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter and Instagram. And you can find this podcast on Spotify, Google and Apple Podcast and Amazon Music. Get in touch, and like they say, like and subscribe. And we'd also like to say a big thank you to Anne Chapman Audio for the theme tune of this podcast.